It is now 6:30. Call the meeting of the Calvert County Police Accountability Board to order. We do have a quorum. Member Funzel Hawkins is joining us online, and so we do have all the members here. Just to let you know, the meeting is being recorded, and you have in front of you the agenda for this meeting. So if you would review that agenda, and I will entertain a motion to either approve it or to change it. There's a motion to approve and a second. Discussion on the agenda before us. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The agenda has been approved. For the chairman's report, I don't have a lot for the chairman's report. I know that some of you are doing the Open Meetings Act, and we appreciate that. We are required to have at least one person at each meeting that's familiar with the Open Meetings Act. And just, I think all of you are aware that Susan Justice now represents the PAB on the ACC. So Susan is on the ACC, and she is the vice chair of the ACC. The agreement was that the member of whoever represents the PAB on the ACC comes in as the vice chair. That's the only update I have. Susan, you have anything?
Nothing else at this time.
Okay. Then the first item we have is the complaint report. And you have that in front of you. We have, so far this year, since January 2024, we've had 26 complaints. 20 of those cases have been reviewed by the Administrative Charging Committee. 5 complaints were not eligible for review for whatever reason. Could be because of the time frame, or it could be something that would not come under the PAB/ACC. Cases resulting in administrative charges. These are cases that the ACC has looked at and has decided to administratively charge the person that that was being complained about. So we have 4 of those. I have 3 cases pending, and I think we are doing 2 of those cases next week. The pending cases. And the other cases, ACC charge in agreement with the Sheriff's Office findings, we had 4. So any questions on the cases that, the status of the complaints? Okay. This is just another view of the same thing. Okay. The next item on the agenda is the, it's called the ACC PAB Review of Duties and Responsibilities. We are pleased and happy that we have Wayne Silver here with us this evening. He is the Executive Director of Maryland Police Training and Standards Commission. Wayne's organization, matter of fact, Wayne is the person that trains the ACC members, and also did the one-day training for the PAB back in June 25th. So, Wayne, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
We are very pleased that you could join us. And what we wanted to do is that we had 2 follow-up training days back in June. Mm-hmm. We had on the 24th of June, you met with the ACCs in the Southern Maryland region to give them a refresher course, if you will, because they had 5 days of training before. And then on the 25th of June, you met with the PABs. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, I went to the ACC training. And at the PAB training, my understanding, there was at least some questions after the training as to how we were doing the PAB function in Calvert County versus a couple of other counties. So we wanted to go through what we actually do. I think you know that, what we actually do here. But quickly go through what we do, and if there's anyone who can phrase or understand what that question was that you had, the reason why we're bringing Wayne in to help explain, you can do that. But for the PAB, we have, of course, we receive complaints, and we have an online system for receiving complaints.
Correct.
We are obligated to forward those complaints to the sheriff's office within 72 hours.
Correct.
And we do that. Complaints can also be received by the sheriff's office, and they notify us. We have an online tracking system which tracks the status of those complaints. So that's the one thing that we have as the PAB. The PAB also appoints 2 members of the administrative charging committee, and we also appoint the trial board
Correct.
member.
Correct.
The
civilian trial board member.
The civilian trial board, yes, yes. And at least quarterly, the PAB conducts, we're required to meet quarterly to talk about any opportunities to enhance the relationship between the law enforcement and the citizens. And then we also have an obligation to do a annual report.
Correct.
Okay. So that's what we have, and my understanding, if I get this correctly, it was that looking at those duties, there were some questions around how much information or the PAB gets.
Correct.
That information vary based on the jurisdiction.
So you're right, absolutely right. So what we found is that the roles oftentimes between the PAB and the ACC in some jurisdictions have become blurred. And it's really because the entities don't really understand what their responsibilities are. And you've outlined your responsibilities
Right.
pretty well. The best way I could put it is the ACC's responsibility is to look backwards. To, if there is a complaint, it's investigated by the sheriff's office forwards that investigative file, and they make their decision and recommendation based off of that. The PAB's role is to look forward, to look at the bigger picture, to look at if there are some other patterns, okay? And then that gets exactly back to what information should the PAB receive, all right? So the law says, the Public Accountability and Reform Act says that the ACC will provide a review of the outcomes of their cases, all right? Now, we've had a lot of discussions with my Assistant Attorney General and with some of the other PABs, and we have interpreted that as the PAB should only be receiving an outcome. And what do I mean by outcome? It wouldn't be no information that is directly related to an individual. So you wouldn't receive an individual's name, you wouldn't receive the officer's name, you wouldn't receive the complainant's name. You would just basically give an overview. For example, you may be told that there was a complaint of rude behavior against a deputy with the sheriff's office. We reviewed the investigative file, and we made a determination to administratively charge, and here was our recommendation. You wouldn't get into the level where you would have, it was against Deputy Smith, and the complaint was made by Ms. Jane Doe, because you're really looking at those big picture items to see, okay, if you had, for example, 20 complaints, and hypothetically I'm talking here, and 10 of those cases you decided to administratively charge, and in 7 of those 10, or I should say the ACC decided to charge, in 7 of those 10, the cases were for rude and discourteous behavior, well, then perhaps the issue, the forward thinking is, we have to do something about the communication, okay? As opposed to, you know, if it was excessive force or vehicle collisions or whatever it may be. So that's the role of the PAB. Now, also part of that looking forward is, we also have to look at the complaints you're receiving. Now, you're very fortunate that you've established an infrastructure where the sheriff's office also sends you their complaints. Because the law only says you have to give them to the sheriff's office. It doesn't say the sheriff's office has to give them to you, but that's a nice situation you have. So you also want to look at that too, because let's go back to using so it's easy math, the 20 complaints. Let's say 20 of those, out of those 20 complaints, 10 of them were for an unlawful arrest. And you didn't administratively charge in any of those. Because they weren't arrests, they were investigative detentions,
Okay.
which are lawful. Well, then you still may have something that you would want to report in that end-of-year report, that we have to do a better job of explaining to people why we're encountering them. What's the basis of this? What are we doing here? As opposed to, and it may or may not, but you still have a pattern to look at, okay, to move forward. What doesn't fall within the PAB's authority, and I'm not in any way, shape, or form saying it's happening here, but I've seen elsewhere, is the PAB does not investigate the complaint. The PAB does not look at the entire investigative file,
Right.
okay, or anything like that. But you're looking more at the big picture, the forward-thinking things. The ACC's looking at what's happened in the past.
Okay. I guess the one thing that's maybe unique for us is that when we, as the Administrative Charging Committee, we look at the complaint and there's a decision to charge. The ACC at that time also looks at whether there's a need to change the policy or to implement a policy or make recommendations. They would make that recommendation to the PAB.
Correct.
And we would make that recommendation, we would discuss it here and then make that recommendation to the sheriff's office.
Correct. And that could be a situation where if an ACC decided not to administratively charge for a complaint of misconduct, and the reason they didn't charge is because the agency didn't have a policy that made it misconduct.
Right.
So that would be part of that overview. The reason we didn't administratively charge is because they don't have a policy saying
Right.
you can't do it. And you see that a lot in counties that have multiple jurisdictions. Whereas you may have two officers from different jurisdictions and the ACC actually, who engaged in the same behavior. And the ACC administratively charges one based on a policy violation to meet the measurement of misconduct and does not charge in the other one because they simply didn't have a policy. And that's not uncommon in law enforcement. Like most vocations, policies are usually written after somebody does something.
Yeah.
So that would just be to make the PAB aware that, hey, maybe we need a policy that covers this specifically. And then you would address that and send it over to the sheriff's office. Now, knowing most law enforcement agencies, as soon as they got that information from the ACC or even beforehand, they have probably already started writing that policy
Right.
in there. But that is certainly within the PAB's purview to say, hey, you don't have a policy on this, then maybe you should.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we've done that, and we've worked closely and cooperatively with the sheriff's office, and they have responded to every recommendation we've made. The one thing that's, I guess, unique here is that we only have one law enforcement agency that we're dealing with, so we don't have to, when we look at the policies, we're looking at the same set of policies for all the
Correct.
complaints that are coming in.
Correct.
So that's been helpful. Now, the patterns, I guess, that there may be three cases that you mentioned, like we have to do something about communications. That right now, the way we do it, that would come out of the ACC
As
as
part
a
of their
recommendation.
findings. Okay.
That you need to look at communications and come up with a recommendation to the sheriff's office as how to handle that. And that's worked effectively. That you know, we have representation there, they make the recommendation, we bring it back here, and then we discuss it. Now, what that looks like is that the PAB is not getting into a lot of the trending because the recommendations are coming in from the ACC. I think that might have been one of the concerns in terms of how much information they got.
Well, you're right, it could be, but it also feeds right into the PAB's responsibility, because let's say that the ACC is putting on there that, hey, and the disciplinary matrix allows that. It allows the ACC to make those recommendations back. The ACC sends that information back to the sheriff's office, okay? You still have a role in that because you know what the ACC said.
Yeah.
Then you can coordinate with the sheriff's office and say, hey, you know, because it's a recommendation. You know, the sheriff could look at it and say, I don't agree with it. And then you could discuss why, you know, because it's a recommendation. But if nothing else, let's say you reach out to the sheriff's office and the sheriff says, yes, I agree, we could do a better job at that. Well, then that would be what you would put in your annual report, that we identified a problem, we're working with the sheriff's office to fix it. So it's just a matter, it's still part of that checks and balance. And one of the things with this that we've really tried to emphasize, whether the training we just started doing with PABs, the ACCs, or even when we talk to command staffs, is this shouldn't be confrontational. This should be a partnership, because everyone is trying to get to the same end, the same goal.
Absolutely.
And the easiest way to do that is, so if the ACC tells as part of the recommendation to the sheriff's office, hey, can you look at this? Or you should look, maybe you should look at this. And they've started looking at it, well, it's all part of that partnership.
Yep.
Yep.
And as that happens, let's say in month one, when we get to month three with the PAB meeting, we also make that recommendation, and we have an open discussion with the sheriff's office as to whether they agree or there are some concerns they may have about it. So there is a check that as we implement changes or recommend changes to the sheriff's office.
Absolutely. And I like the way you put that it is a recommendation. I have no reason to believe this has happened in Calvert County, but there have been other places where, shall we say, the recommendation hasn't been realistic.
Right.
So it certainly is. But then if there was a recommendation that the sheriff's office decided, or the sheriff decided, I'm not going to implement that, that doesn't mean the system doesn't work.
Right.
It just means he can articulate why he's not doing it. Or maybe he's like, well, we already do this much, whatever it may be. So it's all part of all part of getting to the same goal.
Okay.
Even at the end, we don't necessarily agree on how we should get there.
Okay. Any other questions?
So just to clarify, it sounds like the PAB has the primary responsibility for policy recommendations or improvements to policing, and the ACC has the primary responsibility for, or the sole responsibility for, recommending disciplinary actions as a result of their case review. But as a matter of course, with our board, when the ACC sees that there may be a gap in policy and they make a recommendation, it still comes to us, which it has been for review. I'm just
Absolutely.
stating it in layman's terms, so that when we have a conversation afterward, everybody's on the same page.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's important to have that too, because if you just rely on the ACC letting the sheriff's office, and you are, in my humble opinion, it's much easier to work with one sheriff's office than multiple agencies.
It is.
If you didn't fulfill your function, well, then you never know if it was resolved.
Right.
Or if it's
Right.
or if the sheriff's office makes a determination not to implement the recommendation, why? Because there might be a very good reason. There might be a legal reason why they can't do it, or whatever it may be. There might be a commission reason they can't do it. So you're absolutely right. That role is to kind of make sure, hey, are we all on the same page moving forward?
Now, to just one more point of clarification, Mr. Perrin, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
With the role to recommend improvements to policing and let's say the data that we get from the complaints that were brought in, those that were administratively charged, those that were, dismissed, things of that nature. Should the PAB in that summary be receiving information that says, I heard you say it a little bit earlier, this case came in, it was a complaint of excessive force, or it was a complaint of, whatever it might have been, and no names mentioned, no officers' names or community members' names mentioned. This was the complaint or the nature of the complaint. This is why we chose to throw it away, whatever the case is. That type of information should come up to the PAB level to help us in that.
Yes, in the form of an outcome.
Right, in the form of an outcome.
This is what the ACCs did. We heard the case, this was the complaint, we decided to administratively charge, not administratively charge, and this was our recommendation. It should never go into any information that's specifics on who the complainant is, or even the details of what occurred. It
Right.
should just be an overview. Now, I will tell you, there are some jurisdictions who are hearing 30 cases a month. There is one jurisdiction that their ACC is sitting for once a week for 8 hours a day, okay? And what they're doing is they're doing it by spreadsheet, because the information is pretty much the same type of information each time, just because of the sheer volume. But in a jurisdiction like Calvert, where you're not getting inundated with those type of things, then yeah, a simple brief of, hey, these are the cases we're hearing, this is what, basically, this is how we've resolved them, one way or the other, is the way most counties of your size are doing it.
Okay.
Yep.
So we could be looking at more than sheer numbers and
Oh,
looking at
absolutely.
some of that qualitative information, so that we can,
Yes, and that's important, and actually, I tried to look at every county's end-of-year report. And one of the problems I found with some counties, not necessarily with yours, okay, as a matter of fact, I don't think it's happened with yours, is that when they get to their end-of-the-year report, they focus on the number of complaints they received. Well, that's important, don't get me wrong. Like I said, if you're getting 20 complaints, or 40% of your complaints are for abusive language or unlawful arrest, there may be an issue that has to be addressed, because why are you getting them? However, the bigger issue is how many of them are being administratively charged, or supported by the objective facts of the investigative file. There's one county who did their end-of-year report, and they focused solely on, here's how many complaints we have. Well, that's not a clear picture.
Right.
And that's what it comes back to. You want to have a clear picture for the department, the community, and for the members of your board.
Correct.
So that you can make sure you're giving accurate information. So I think you have to look at both. You have to look at both.
So one of the things we did at the August meeting, because that was when the question was fresh as to what other PABs are getting that we're not getting. And the ACC sent over all of the cases since the first of the year
Okay.
that they charged. And we redacted
Okay.
everything that would have been sensitive and we shouldn't share. Do you feel that's worthwhile?
Here's the concern I have with sending over just the redacted. When you
Right.
say redacted, are you talking about the investigative file or just their
The
report?
recommendation from the ACC
Okay,
to
big
sheriff's
difference.
office.
Not necessarily, as long as it kind of sticks to that very simplistic information of, we had a complaint, here's what we did, we administratively charged, because you may administratively charge for something that wasn't the initial complaint. And I know
Right.
you might want to talk about that
We're
later.
gonna talk about that.
But, so that's valuable, or you can just do it on a spreadsheet or verbally. It's done all different ways and depending on the county. And a lot of it's dependent on the amount of cases that the county's hearing.
Yeah, we only have a couple coming in per month, but by the time you get to a quarter, it may be 8 to 10 that we're looking at. And I don't know whether you found the redacted copies worthwhile or not.
We had talked about, and I think Michael was in on that, developing a type of spreadsheet or where we had just that simple information so that the PAB could see, are we having a trend? Are we having constantly, foul language or, abuse of power or whatever? And the thought that might be better than giving redacted papers, because it's too much.
It's too, plus, without having seen your form that you're writing up your decisions on, or your ACC is writing their decisions on. If there's any information on there that there can be some context based on how you read it that's redacted, it's still not the investigative file.
Yep.
And so it could lead you to a path of having a certain impression of what occurred when that's not necessarily what occurred. So I recommend either it's given verbally by the chair of the ACC, or just that it's given in a very simplistic form that just gives you the information you need to perform your function.
And that's what we had talked about a couple of weeks ago with Michael, putting that together for the PAB. Okay. Anything else on that piece of it?
Is there more information that we should be looking for as a trend that the community thinks that we should be looking at? I mean, like, in what area of the county did it happen, or racial concerns?
I think if we look at what the law says you will review the outcomes.
Right,
Okay?
but for trending.
Most of the outcomes are not going to have that breadth of information in them. So I think it's a little bit beyond the scope of what
Okay.
but, you know, obviously you can communicate with your sheriff's office at any time about, hey, is there an issue with anything else that may be brought to your PAB's attention that isn't related to a complaint? Understanding that, and I've seen this in other jurisdictions, the sheriff's office or the police department, if it was a department, may not have that information, may not have that data. So I wouldn't do that from the outcomes of what you get with that. Because there's a lot of information that's in that investigative file that can put the decision that the ACC made in context, that frankly, the law was very specific that only the ACC gets the information to see.
Any other question before we move on to the next one? Okay, so we're clear. Thank you on that one. The other one you briefly mentioned, that is the clarification on charging of additional offenses beyond the original complaint, as identified during the ACC investigation.
Okay. This has actually come up in quite a few counties,
Yeah.
which is one of the reasons why we kind of touched base with it when we did the training. It is not uncommon for a citizen to make a complaint, frankly, who really has no knowledge or expertise about law enforcement processes or criminal justice processes. So they may do it based off of what they hear from their friends or frankly what they see on TV. The example I always use of this is it was an unlawful arrest because they don't understand there's a consensual encounter or investigative detention or an arrest. So it is not uncommon as an investigative file was being developed by a department that they quickly realize that this was not an unlawful arrest. However, we've identified other misconduct while we were doing it. And the important part of this is the agency addresses that other misconduct they found during the course of the investigation in the investigative report. Okay? Where what we found is happening in some places is the ACC is reviewing a file and they're seeing something on there that is a red flag. For example, they're seeing, and this happens oftentimes when there's subject matter expertise, whether it's prior law enforcement on the ACC or people that have a legal background or whatever it may be, where they say, okay, that's a violation of the Fourth Amendment. Okay, that's stop. Well, the guidance we're giving is that you can look at that, but you shouldn't look at it in a vacuum. If it's something that the department has not had the opportunity to address in their investigative file, then a decision shouldn't be made at that moment. What can be done, because when they receive the file, they have one of three things they can do as an ACC. They can decide to administratively charge, to not administratively charge, or return it for additional information, okay? So what we're recommending, they certainly can look at that, but if it's something that's not covered in the investigative file, it should be sent back to the agency to investigate. And I'll give you I'll give you one of the reasons why. One of the reasons why an ACC can determine not to administratively charge an officer is based on supervisory failing. And a supervisory failing could be a variety of reasons. It's not defined in the law, like the other things are founded or exonerated. Supervisory failing could be that the agency didn't have a policy that made it misconduct. Or it could be that the policy is not clear. Or it could be that a supervisor told them to do it. Or it could be that the policy was just changed and it was never passed on to the officer. There's a variety of reasons that it could be that. So the reason why I would recommend that you send it back to the department to investigate is, A, the department may have looked at it. I'll use the Fourth Amendment violation. The department may have already run it by their state's attorney, and their state's attorney looked at it and said, I don't have a problem with this. Well, then why would they include it in the investigative file? Because to them, it was clear. Whereas if you table it, return it for additional information, or the ACC tables it and returns it for additional information, that gives the agency the opportunity to weigh in that, hey, our state's attorney looked at this and they didn't find a constitutional violation, okay? On other things, it may be that, no, we didn't address that, because maybe they just didn't think of it. But now that we've looked at it, we realize we don't have a policy that makes that a misconduct violation. Or even if it's something that is a violation of law, well, we've never trained our officers on that. So that's why it becomes important that you look at it, because really you're looking at, did this officer engage in misconduct? And it is valid that we're not going to administratively charge the officer because they didn't know it was a violation. So that could easily fall under supervisory failing. So that's why we're recommending that they send it back. Now, one of the things that comes up sometimes is, well, there's the 30 days. The ACC has 30 days to hear the case from the time they hear it. The law is unclear on what happens if they don't hear it in 30 days. Okay, unlike the year and a day, that is very cut and dry. The ACC no longer has jurisdiction after a year and a day. But when they send it back to that agency for additional information, the 30-day clock restarts when they get the information back. So if you, for example, if your ACC asked them to look at a Fourth Amendment violation because they felt that the vehicle stop was too long, well, the moment they sent it back, they followed the rules of what they had to do, because they either had to administratively charge, non-administratively charge, or return it for additional information. Once they returned it, that 30 days stopped. Now, when the agency does the additional investigation, provides the additional information, returns it to the ACC has a new 30 days to look at it. Okay. So that gives, okay, well, no, the state's attorney looked at it and said it's not a Fourth Amendment violation. So we now, because the whole purpose of them returning it is the ACC is saying, we have something possibly, but we don't have all the information we need to make that determination. So it's giving the agency the opportunity to weigh in and provide that information so that they're just not winging it, so to speak.
Okay. Let me give you a hypothetical.
Yes, let's make it a hypothetical.
There is a complaint about a way a citizen was treated.
Mm-hmm.
The ACC looks at all the videos, they look at all the documentation, and in looking at it, they find that there's a potential for an ADA violation.
Okay.
And there's no, let's say there's no ADA policy. So the ACC makes a recommendation that you need to have an ADA policy, because quite frankly, it puts the county at risk if something happens. Do we just make that recommendation, or do we send it back?
I would send it back.
Send it back, okay.
Yeah, and here's why, because we can't assume that the department doesn't have an ADA policy.
But we do know that.
Okay, how do we know that? Do we know it officially from the agency?
No, because we know the policies they have. As part of the ACC, they look at all the policies
Okay.
that are out there.
I would still recommend send it back,
Send
give
it back.
the agency the opportunity to weigh in, because
Okay.
what they may do is they may say, we don't have an ADA policy specific to our agency, but we follow another ADA policy, the counties or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Give them the opportunity to weigh in,
Okay.
and then make a determination on whether, because then you also have to look at, was that officer ever made aware of what the policy was? Those type of things. You know, if it was something where you send it back and the department looks at it and says, yes, we don't have an ADA policy, but we follow the county, and I'm just making this up,
Right.
so it's hypothetical. We don't have a policy, but we follow the county's policy, and part of their onboarding is they are briefed on this and they receive additional training on it. Now you've got very thorough information to work off of. Whereas opposed if they say, no, we really don't have an ADA policy. All right, well, that's something the PAB can now take up with the department, but the department's probably gonna look at it anyway, even before it gets there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with that one, I'm gonna ask the sheriff or the ACC chair, or John, if you got any comments or questions around that one.
John Norris, County Attorney, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
That's okay.
There is a provision in 3-104E4, I believe it is, that gives the ACC the opportunity to review body cam footage. But it is very limited, or it appears to be very limited, to what the subject matter or the scope of the complaint is. So if the allegation is police misconduct for abuse of power, but they find that they didn't put the pen cap back on before they put it in their pocket, and that's a violation of policy, are those two related enough to still fall within the ACC's jurisdiction under the scope of the statute?
The guidance we give when we train the ACC, you're right. You could take it to an absurd level. Is that, does it tie back to the purpose of why we're here? You know, it's almost like watching a football play. On almost any play, you could find something, you know. So how thorough or how big of an issue is this? And the guidance we give when we give the ACC is that, you know, you're not going to go down rabbit holes. But if it's something that is substantive enough that we have an issue here, okay, and this affects the community, or this could be a bigger issue, then I think it's reasonable to have the ACC weigh in on it, okay? But I don't think the ACC should be, and I don't think it's the purpose based off of the General Assembly for the ACT to look at every single thing. Okay. Now, you bring up body-worn camera. You're absolutely right. The problem with body-worn cameras, even though they're a great tool, sometimes the body-worn camera will clarify the report. Other times the report will clarify the body-worn camera, okay? So you really have to balance it. Do you have all the information to make that decision? Because the system would just grind to a standstill if we looked at every single, and you know, the example I use when I do the ACC training is that, you know, speeding. You know, officers sometimes exceed the speed limit, and an agency may have a policy that says you won't go above the speed limit unless you're responding to an emergency. But there's a variety of reasons why it is a lawful reason why that police officer or that sheriff's deputy would be exceeding the speed limit, and he's not actually responding to something. It's just, is it practical? Is it common sense? So you're right. I wouldn't go down a rabbit hole, but on the other side of that, if I was reviewing the investigative file, the body-worn camera was part of it, and the complaint involved a excessive force, but I hear an awful lot of abusive language, I'm gonna address that abusive language. And chances are, the department has already addressed that abusive language in the report that came to you. But if for some reason they didn't, I would send it back and say, have you addressed this abusive language? Yeah, and it may be as simple as, did you just, you know, because, you know, in all likelihood, in 99.9% of the cases, the police officer or the sheriff's deputy who is the subject of the complaint, they've been interviewed. Well, did they ask them about it?
Yeah.
You know, those type of things. So it's just basically making sure all the information is available. Absolutely. Thank you.
So
Ed?
I just want to clarify, when the ACC gets a complaint, they are to address the complaint because the complaint has been investigated by the department. Any other issue that is observed through body cams and things like that, that weren't addressed in the complaint or by the department should then be sent back to the department.
Sent back for additional
clarification.
information.
Right.
And in a lot of cases, and I'm sure the sheriff would agree with this, it is not uncommon doing an internal investigation to identify other misconduct. So in all they're gonna address that as well already in it. If they address it in that investigative file, in all likelihood there will be a section where they'll tell you, we had an issue with this. It may be under recommended, look at this policy, this policy, this policy, or it may be in the sheriff's recommendation that he sends with it. You don't have to send that back. They're giving you the information to make that decision. But if there's that gap between the information, and it may just simply be you send it back and they're like, oh, well, we didn't put that in there because we didn't think about it, so here it is. It just makes sure that the ACC has all the information they need to make a proper decision, one way or the other.
And then if it's found that they have unlawfully done something, the ACC can recommend they be cited for it, even though it wasn't in the original complaint?
Yes.
Okay.
But what it also does is if since we only have the sheriff's office here, I'll say if the sheriff sent a recommendation and he doesn't address that, the other part of sending it back is it gives them an opportunity to address it as well, based off of, here's where we think it falls on the disciplinary matrix. Here's what we think the impact is to the community. Now, as you know, you don't have to accept that, but it still gives them the opportunity, if they choose to use it, to weigh in on that.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from the board on that? Since we do have the sheriff and the ACC chair, and we have the privilege of having Wayne here with us today, do you have any comments on what he said about that?
My name is Ed Baylor.
You gotta come on up. We can't hear you. You gotta.
I'll be your left-hand guy.
All right, Ed.
Mr. Chairman, as you know, I'm the ACC chair, and I'm glad Wayne is here to solve one of our problems that the ACC has experienced, and we started out. One of the problems we have is I'm new, and there's been a changeover in staff, so some of my guidance has led to a little lack of communication, and I'm working on fixing that. I plan on meeting with the sheriff's office and being best buddies. They have been very good at cooperation in our investigations. They give us just about all the information we need, and now I and the committee will have a better understanding of the 30-day rule. We should send more stuff back if we have any more questions, as opposed to a hard and fast, making a decision and sending it forward. And the sheriff's office does a good job. We have a good department, and I don't think we have major problems to discuss. And so I'm thankful for them. I think for Wayne for helping us out, and I think we'll be a better committee by your guidance today. And that 30-day rule is a tough thing to follow when we're going through our stuff, and so I will learn better, and we will do a better job of open communications with the sheriff's office.
And as I've said before, I have held Calvert County, as you know, you were the very first one we trained. I've always held you up as other PABs, other ACCs, especially on the ACC side, they have questions. I'm like, go talk to Calvert County. Go talk to Calvert County. So yeah, the issues that you've requested that we address tonight are not unique to Calvert County. I'm seeing them throughout the state. That's one of the reasons why we started doing the refreshers.
Okay. Sheriff Cox, you have any comments you'd like to take advantage of this opportunity to have Wayne here?
Everybody staying warm?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Silver, thank you for coming down. I know you have a long drive, Mr. Baylor. And to the board, we've had a good year so far. Like I said, communication is key, and I think you can speak from experience that I take the complaints seriously, and we do investigate them thoroughly. All I ask is that Susan, you're talking about other things that you guys are seeing in videos that you have questions about. I think like we use a lot of common sense on that, and bring it back to me, and we give explanation on how it's done. And some things that are brought to my attention are not even thoroughly investigated yet. So we're seeing charges on deputies that we haven't even, were based on the complaint, rather than having that thoroughly investigated. If the facts prove that, that deputy had, him or her has violated anything policy or law-wise, so. That's all I ask.
Okay.
I think communication is the best part of it, and I think that we're very responsive when we've had meetings before in the past, so.
Yeah, I think it's been very effective meetings too. The last thing here, this is probably an easy one, Wayne. We have a PAB complaint form. And on that form, we have complaint type. So I think there are like 5 or 6 different complaint types. So they would check as close as these are citizens. So you don't expect them to know exactly
Correct.
what it means to the investigator that when you check one of those. The discussion we've had is, should we remove the complaint types? Or if we leave the complaint types on there, is the investigation limited to what was checked?
Well, the investigation's not limited. It kind of goes back to what I said before, that
Right,
the folks don't know, may not necessarily know what they don't know.
right.
What I think would work better, perhaps, is just have them give a narrative. And then when, the PAB looks at it, you forward it to the sheriff's office. There's no doubt in my mind the sheriff's internal affairs unit is gonna look at that, and the moment they read that narrative, they're gonna know exactly where they're heading with this.
Yeah, and they do have. there's a
Yes,
narrative.
and so they're gonna classify it how they feel it looks. Now, that doesn't mean that during the course of the investigation, it may not take a right-hand turn, but they're gonna classify it based off of, the parameters they use for their type of cases, Obviously, one of the first things that's gonna be done is they're gonna look at, okay, does it meet the definition of misconduct? Those type of things, and take it from there. By having 4 or 5 artificial, well, I don't say artificial, but 4 or 5 like topical areas. Well, what if it fits more than one?
Yeah.
Well, what if it doesn't fit any of them? So it probably really doesn't serve a purpose, assuming the sheriff and the PAB isn't like, we love it, which maybe you do, maybe you don't. But I think it's better just to have a place where they can put the narrative of what they said happened,
Okay.
and go with that.
Okay, I think that, any questions or comments on that piece of it?
I think, are you talking about the complaint form that we currently give to the citizens?
Yeah, online,
Yeah,
online with
I
PAB.
I don't know if you're referring to this one, but we like to receive positive feedback too. And we may face some criticism or some advice from citizens what we could do better, but it may not reach the complaint level. And that gives me better information to where I can adjust or make improvements within the sheriff's office.
And now, by law, it was just passed in the General Assembly last year, we just sent it out recently, every law enforcement agency must have a positive feedback process as well. They're
Okay.
usually done hand in hand with the complaint, you kind of get do you have a compliment or complaint type of thing. So if it's serving value for that side of the arena, then I would say keep it, because that's a requirement based on statute now.
Okay. Do you have anything else for Mr. Silver? Wayne, I really appreciate you taking the time to
Happy
come
to do it.
down and clarify some things for us. And as you know, we've been working down here and making sure that as we implement this ACC PAB process, work closely with the sheriff's office. And I feel that we have a process that works. And when there's a concern come up, we'd like to address it right away. But I
No
appreciate
worries.
you taking the time to come
Happy to
down.
do it. If I can alleviate any concerns or answer any questions, I'll be happy to come back at any time.
Great. Thank you very
Hotel
much.
room?
No, I'm driving back tonight.
I'll put you up in a hotel, get you dinner if you don't stay.
No, I'll head off.
Okay.
All right, thank you all. If there's
Drive
no other
safe.
questions?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good week. Merry Christmas. Okay,
Whoa,
yeah.
whoa, whoa.
Take care.
See you then.
Take care.
As we talked before, one of the responsibilities of the PAB is to produce an end-of-year report. That end-of-year report goes to the Board of County Commissioners. So we have the responsibility of drafting that to present it also to the PAB for any comments or input that, anything you see that we should change. And we have, this is normally presented in January. And I think we have a date of January 12th? January 14th, that Tuesday, that's the second Tuesday in January, to present it to the Board of County Commissioners. So what I want to go over quickly is that end-of-year report that we've updated to be presented to the County Commissioners. So as I go through, if you feel that there's anything we need to change, welcome to do that. So at this meeting would be Mr. Baylor and myself. Susan, you may be at the table also when we present to the commissioners. So we go over the purpose to present an annual report, and we talk about the Police Accountability Board, who's on it. There is a criteria set up for the makeup of the PAB. So we talk about that and talk about each member, where each member fits whatever criterion we have in place there. We also, this one, we'll just show it to them. This is the process for complaints and how it's actually comes in, goes to the sheriff's office and the ACC, and how the decisions are made in terms of disciplinary actions. So this is pretty much consistent with what other jurisdictions are doing. Some jurisdictions did use the model that we had to put that together. We also remind the commissioners of the responsibility of the PAB. And then we talk about the ACC. We have 5 members on the ACC. The PAB had 9 members. The ACC has 5 members. 2 of the members on the ACC are appointed by the PAB. And the other 3 are actually appointed, 2 by the PAB, 2 by the Board of County Commissioners. The Board of County Commissioners also appoint the chair of the PAB. And the chair of the PAB serves as a member of the ACC unless that chair appoints someone else to do it. So these are the responsibilities of the ACC. And there's another piece of this called the trial board. It's my understanding we have not had a trial board in Calvert County under this process. Is that correct, Sheriff?
Yes,
So
sir.
far? And we appoint a member of the trial board. The commissioners appoint a member of the trial board. And if there is a need to form a trial board, then the sheriff's office would appoint the 3rd member of the trial board. Responsibilities of the trial board, we've appointed a member, and I don't think that person has had to, other than training, they've not had to do anything else up to this point. This slide, working together toward improvements. We're talking about working with law enforcement to build the trust and create internal and external processes, to create internal and external processes. We meet with let's see. We had a state contractor come in and look at all of the PABs and ACCs around the state. This was at the request of the governor's office. And they put together a report, I think it's a 78-page report, in terms of where the PABs and ACCs around the state and what they're doing, what challenges they're dealing with. So that report, this is the cover for that report, but that report is available for anyone who would like to look at it. Just mention it to the commissioners if they're interested in finding out some additional information. Then we got a summary of the complaints that we talk about with the commissioners. Policy recommendations to improve policing. We've had several recommendations since July 1 of 2022. And one of the main recommendations we made was to the sheriff's office consider the accreditation process, and you guys are doing that. That's underway right now. I think you may have implemented most of it now, haven't you?
It's a process, but yes.
Okay, so we recommended that, and in addition to that, we had recommendations that we made in February of this year, and also recommendations in May of this year. So I would review those recommendations with the commissioners. And also there is a memorandum of understanding with the Office of State's Attorney, and also one with the Sheriff's Office. And we should be looking at that at least annually for any updates that we need. We spent a lot of time putting the Sheriff's Office one together, so it was comprehensive at the beginning. And I don't think we had to go back and change anything over it since we put it in place.
No, sir.
Community outreach, we have a presentation that we invite any organization that would like to know more about the Police Accountability Board or the Administrative Charging Committee, how it works, or any concerns you may have. We have a presentation that we will go out to your organization and present the story about the PAB and the ACC, and clarify any concerns that you may have about that process that's in place. Then we talk about some of the achievements. Also the goals for the upcoming year. Acknowledge all the participants in making this possible in Calvert County. Excuse me. And then if there any other information, if you need any other information, how you can get that information, and then we open it up for questions for the commissioners. So that's what we have. Looking at that, do you have any recommended changes, deletions, or to that report?
On the working together toward improvements,
Okay,
we met with state contractor Perf.
yeah,
Could we include a little more information, just if somebody's looking at this as a standalone document, what does that mean and what were the goals of it maybe?
okay,
Just so,
We can do
there's
that.
a little more information there.
you can do that, yeah. They may not even know what perf is. Okay, so we'll add that in. Let's see, anything else? Okay, nothing else, we'll add that in. Michael, you have that as a update for that slide, so we add that slide, and we can send that updated slide out, but we need approval today to continue to update that with that one slide and submit it to the Board of County Commissioners process to get it approved for presentation on the 14th. So if that's the only change, I will entertain a motion to approve the end-of-year report with that change that was recommended.
A motion to approve with that.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second?
that motion.
Second, discussion? All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you very much, we'll get that done. The next item we have here, recommendations.
A sheriff's office. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah.
want to go over those?
No, do the sheriff's office first.
Do the sheriff's office.
Those would be in anyways. Because those would have to be sent back to.
Okay, so we're not gonna do those recommendations, because we're gonna have to, based on the information we just got from Wayne, we're gonna have to get together and send that back to you for
I do
further.
have some information on some of these though, if you want.
Okay,
to Discuss them
Okay.
quickly.
all right, so let's do
A
that.
couple things, at least some recommendations that I have with your recommendations.
So the de-escalation training,
So just, I think one of the things is looking at these, especially the training portion of it that you're talking about, I think one of the things that you don't have, and the ACC doesn't have, and the public doesn't have, and PAD doesn't have, is our training records and what we do at the academy, what the academy standards are, what we do. We spearhead for example, a CIT program here in Southern Maryland that's attended by state police, DNR, Charles County, St. Mary's County, Calvert County, that has all de-escalation trainings, a week long. We do that down at Island Creek. Matter of fact, just like any other training, I offer that up to members of these boards to come, and it is a week long. It's 40 hours. It's intense, that sort of thing. So we do a lot of de-escalation trainings. Those things would not be in our policies, things like that. We also have mandates by the Maryland Police Training Commission, Wayne Silver, that was just here, to do certain training every year, every other year, every third year, that sort of thing. And it's a whole list of things. There's also, I don't even know how many now, when I went through, it was 400 and some mandates that they get when they go to the police academy. It's probably now, I don't know, 600, 700, I don't know, it's probably 200 when Brian went through, I'm not sure, but it's changed quite a bit. So, and we also have, when they graduate that academy, they come to our sheriff's office, which most police officers, departments do. They have another week, actually it's 2 weeks now, it's 10 days of training that they do agency-specific training. And in that agency-specific training, they get body camera training, they get timesheet training, they get all kinds of things that aren't necessarily in the policy and things like that you guys wouldn't have. So my suggestion would be that we try and get you some of those things that we do, because we do have
okay.
obviously records.
So in this case, though, this is the ACC. They're looking at a case, and they see that there's a need for more effective de-escalation.
Sure.
So that's why they
No,
would see it as a training.
I get it, and I'm just, I guess, trying to, my recommendations, ACC doesn't have all of the training information that we've received.
Right.
So that deputy may have received some pretty intensive training that was covered, and matter of fact, most of that training is open source stuff anyway that we could give out, that you could look at and see what that deputy should know or not know. So.
Right. So that's for the ACC.
In one case, Mr. Perrin, you're talking about, it was recommended, and when you had like a deputy which you're probably speaking of, that was mandated to go to de-escalation training, more, due to the incident.
And that was our recommendation.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we put
okay.
that in there.
But.
So with the latest information from Wayne, though, we have a better way of handling that.
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay,
So that was my
got another update?
training thing. The ADA thing, we're still working through.
Okay,
We do, that's one of those things also that's trained at the academy. It's trained different times in their career, I suppose.
May I ask on that?
Yeah.
Are you developing your own
No,
policy?
no, we're not gonna reinvent the wheel.
So you have specific
ADA policy.
procedures that
you
you
have
do
the county,
follow? Are
Correct.
the county procedures?
County has an ADA policy. I mean,
The
It's
county
spelled
coop,
out.
yes, ma'am.
Okay, so that's something that if it came up, can be asked for.
Actually, I met with the Patuxent High School students, and they're actually helping me develop some of the ADA stuff for deputies and also folks with disabilities too. It's kind of neat. They're putting together
Okay.
as a project. And that incorporates our younger generation to, improve not only our community, but the way we do things too as well. So
Yeah.
that's kind of my vision in doing this thing. So they're very cool down there. So it was very interesting class that I attended last week, and
Okay.
working on a good project. So
So the concern we would have would be, is the county at risk or the sheriff's office at risk because of
Sure,
some observed behavior?
sure.
Okay.
The other thing, the other roadblock, not roadblock, but the other hurdle to that a little bit is the CALIA process as well. So when we get a new policy such as that, we can't just throw it in there anymore. We've got to make sure that it's going to adhere to what the CALIA standards say that
Yep.
we're supposed to do. So it makes it a little more lengthy process for us, because we don't want to do things twice. If that makes sense.
Okay. So based on the other ones, do we not, we just refer them back? Okay. So we'll skip the,
Yeah, the
Okay.
others will just,
That's fine. I just wanted to make sure that the training portion was kind of put out there. That's something we could do a better job of getting
okay.
to you.
Then we will not take any action on the recommendations. We gotta take another look at them based on what Wayne had recommended.
like I
Yes.
said from the beginning, I like the recommendations or even like advice or what you're saying that can make my office better. I mean,
Mhm.
I like that kind of engagement. Yeah, I welcome that. I mean,
Yeah.
from the beginning I have.
Oh, yes, you have.
Yeah.
I agree. So with that, we're not gonna make any recommendations, take any actions on recommendations, but if we go to D, this is one item for the board, then we'll get back to you for your report.
Yes, sir.
As I mentioned, we appoint, the PAB appoints 2 members of the, on the ACC. So this is the 3rd year, and in June, their terms, those 2 members' terms will be up. I know that both members are interested in another term. So it's up to this board how you want to handle it. If you have 2 members that we appointed in the past and they're interested, we can go ahead and, at that point, not tonight, at that point, decide to go ahead and just reappoint them. Or you can leave it open and see who else would want to apply. I think that's up to the actual PAB. So I want to throw that out, any discussion around the 2 members we've appointed. And we did that in the exec session, if you remember, one of the first items that we did. And they're both good members. I've served with them on the ACC, and they're interested in continuing. Think about it. You don't have to decide tonight. We're about 5 months away in terms of having to make that decision. So let's think about whether, I did talk to the attorney that we don't really have to follow the advertising process and all that because the regulation's clear. We are to appoint 2 members. Okay? With that, status update from the sheriff's office in the 3rd quarter.
Yeah, from the beginning, elected as sheriff, I kind of put this quarterly report out. I like giving it to you guys and the citizens that you can find online or of what we do. I think that wasn't really put out there to the public, but just some of the highlights that we do on what your deputies are doing out there, protecting our community each and every day. During the 3rd quarter, we had big events as far as school starting, so that's always big for us. Getting off to a good start in school, putting out to the public. Buses are going to be out there. We still have issues with folks running the red lights on the buses, and that's a big problem that we've been facing, keeping our kids safe on the buses. Just putting those announcements out and trying to keep people more, I mean, it seems like everybody's in a rush anymore, getting to work or whatnot, kids and stuff like that, just to be aware of your surroundings and what's going on. We also had a lot of kids DARE camp, so me as the sheriff, I want to bring back more of that DARE curriculum to the kids and the younger generation, because right now we're not teaching that in schools, what drugs look like, how they affect you short-term, long-term, and that DARE teaches also to, which I think kids need to be aware of, is the decision-making process, which that's taught in the curriculum. Which I think you can see it at the Calverton School, which we taught there, which is kind of cool, which they've already know the process of how to do that, and what's faced with peer pressure when that's put in front of you, and I think that's really good that we taught these kids there this summer, and Deputy Parks put that together very well, and he did a great job with that. I gave out my scholarship to a high school student through the high school's essay program, so I'd like to support our younger generation, our criminal justice students that are down that pathway of that, keeping those kids involved, because they are our next generation. I sat in the classroom at Calvert High School, 25 years ago, roughly, and I chose this profession because of the people I saw coming into my classroom, and hopefully our next generation does the same. The Junior Police Academy we did as well. We recognized Deputy Claggett. He was our hometown hero at the Blue Crabs game. That was pretty neat. He was selected for that. And stuff we highlight in here, to back to school program that we have there in all of our schools, which we give back to the backpack program. And myself and Assistant Sheriff Dave Payne, we attended the State of the County breakfast, which is kind of cool. We kind of a lot of the citizens from the business community come in and give us insight of what they're seeing and what they would like to see different as far as what we do, and the county commissioners as well. And I don't want to get really long-winded with it, but some of the numbers that we've had throughout the third quarter, you can find towards the back. Calls for service 25,415. I mean, that seems like a big number. But what's included in that too is traffic stops, patrol checks of businesses and communities and stuff like that. So our deputies are out there, they're hustling. As you can see, traffic citations, almost 1,500, and warnings. DUI arrests are still at a high number for me. People still do it, so I want to educate the folks here tonight. That's a serious DUI, as I take serious, and I think every citizen does as well. And we're coming to that season where everybody's having holiday parties. If you could find a safe driver, if you could. What's really high is the traffic accidents still. 443 during that quarter is very high. So we got to do a better job as far as distracted driving, as well as the citizens driving our roadways. Put the phone down, drive at a safe speed, because we do have a lot of young drivers and elderly drivers out there too as well that are traveling our roadways that we have to look after too as well. But as you can see the numbers there, I want to kind of touch on the jail as well. They do fall under me as the sheriff too. As you can see, just the amount of numbers that we processed: 399 prisoners processed and 406 processed out. That's just during the quarter. So that's how many prisoners that we're having to either educate or putting long-term in our facility, or we're trying to get them back on the street as productive citizens in our programs that we host at our facility too as well. And a lot of the programs that go to the graduations and the drug court program that Judge Shanley puts on is very intensive, and it's another route to where we can have somebody put in that program as an alternative as sitting in jail and being a productive citizen again. So, but that's just a little bit about our third quarter. You can go ahead and read through it, but if you guys have any questions for me, please do so.
This is not related to PAB, but any status on capital projects at the detention center?
It's a
Been around for a while.
county issue.
Okay. But you do have a plan for,
Yes.
that's been around for a while, and it
Correct.
keeps,
Long.
in
years.
addition to the state that pays a large piece of that.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It's been addressed multiple times since I've been the sheriff, but as you know, the funding's always the issue. So
One thing I kind of want to make clear, Sheriff hit it on a little bit, but with the accidents, because I see this a little bit, we have dedicated a lot of resources, a lot of overtime, a lot of manpower to the areas that we consider hot spots in the county for accidents. One, I guess everybody's pretty familiar with now, is 231, and as you know, the infrastructure of that is horrible. We're out there. We're out there quite a bit. We're keeping track of what we're doing out there. We've tracked the speed on that road. The speed is not necessarily the issue. It's left turns. It's not paying attention to the people that are making those left turns and that sort of thing. It really isn't the speed. It's more paying attention stuff. So we really need to get people to put their phones down and pay attention and that sort of thing, especially on that road, until we can get something figured out on that road.
And it was infrastructure allocated funds to that, but that got cut by the governor. And it looks like that got pushed out to 2028 as far as make.
28.
Correct. That's what they're telling me now because, that road is, you have a lot of stuff going on that road. You got the park, you got the college, you got the school, you got a
It's just not meant for that traffic.
you have a dump, a jail, a treatment facility, you got an animal shelter. It's a lot of, and I just ask people if you could just be patient and, like the colonel said, 54 miles an hour was the tracked average speed on Route 231. So you see it's a lot of distracted driving and not paying attention. So if we could do that. And I've been on 231 too, just monitoring myself, and you see a lot of distracted driving on that roadway. So
It's 2028.
yeah, see if we can pull some strings to get that pushed up a little bit.
That, they had to pull some strings to get it on the list.
Correct.
So it's.
But the first phase of it was supposed to start this summer
Okay.
because we were in the works in doing that.
Yeah.
We were proactive in that matter.
That's good.
And we see the issue, we try to address it, but
Is there a way to police distracted driving? Like the speeding, obviously you set up to do that, but I've sped before and my car has never just crashed inherently from that. It's, there's other factors that happen there, and that's.
We do things, we put people out at intersections and we do all kinds of different techniques to try to get people, but it's.
I just don't know, I don't know how you guys can catch people for
the
that.
best thing
and
has
that's
been
the
working
biggest
actually is
problem.
just putting a deputy there with his lights on and they slow down.
Yeah.
They
Pay
see the
attention.
deputy and then they're putting their phone down.
Pay attention for a little while.
We
Yeah,
put
right,
we
for
put the messaging boards out
32
there.
seconds.
Done it all.
Yeah.
Just try to keep people's attention on that. Again, there's a lot of young drivers on that road too, because you got the college, the schools, and that's a big commuter roadway too as well. And just not us; it's on the other side of the bridge too as well. That's been issues as well.
Yeah.
So, and I've been working with Sheriff Berry.
That road is my least favorite road. I've been in 2
Right.
serious accidents on it in my life. I hate it.
And I agree with you. And just to touch on the Kalia thing, that's a long process. We're going to meet our goal where we want to be at to get certified. But I was down in Florida with Sheriff Berry, a very good role model of mine, and they've been accredited for a very long time. And it was very interesting to see because they went for their re-up for their accreditation, and it was very cool to see how they went through the whole process. You do an interview with their board and their findings of what they dive into all your policy and all the things that you do and make recommendations, and it kind of fits their criteria, and then you're accredited. It was kind of cool to see how that works, but we're going to get there and we're going to do it. So.
Thank you. Any questions?
I just had a couple of quick questions
Okay.
for you. The school bus enforcement that you talked about, or the issues with schools, do they have any cameras on any of the buses in this county that you know of?
The Lieutenant Colonel's been on that, and he can kind of address the issues with that.
So the school has, the contractor said there's cameras on the buses, as far as I understand, but
Yeah.
are you talking about
Yeah, to see that people passing
the
the
stop sign buses? So the reason that got held up was Montgomery County was working on some bills that was going to require the companies to issue a warning first before a citation. Well, that became not profitable for the companies. So the company was waiting for that legislation, which ultimately got denied. So we're kind of back on the works of it. The other stumbling block in Calvert is they are all contracted. So we have to go to, I don't remember how many it is now, but there's so many contractors, and we have to make sure that we have to do it when there's downtime to get them installed and things like that. There's no cost to us to do that. I do have to get it to the commissioners and before the commissioners and to add it to our program, I believe. I'll talk to John about that, but so we're back on track with that. But there was a holdup because of the proposed legislation.
And the only other question I had was, you talked about the DWIs, and we're coming up into that season. Do you guys do coordinated checkpoints, saturation patrols? Do you do
We
things
start
like
holiday patrols, and that's not necessarily DUIs, but it encompasses that as well. We start holiday patrols, I don't know, a few weeks ago, and it runs all the way through past the first of the year, that sort of thing. And we're out to shopping centers and that kind of thing. We still do checkpoints that are coordinated. As you know, they're not just as easy as just setting them up on Dares Beach Road. There's a lot that goes into those, but we do those still, and we'll continue to do that. And we put extra patrols out on certain times of the night that we think there'll be people out drinking and driving, that sort of thing, and do our best. The numbers are down from what they used to be, and but the one part of me says it's good that we don't have as many, and the other part says we're just not catching them as well. So we need to do a better job of that. So.
Yeah, the concerning part is when you see an accident and alcohol or drugs is involved. So, I mean, when you see that kind of elevate, it's where you really got to pay attention to. It is the holiday season coming up, like the Colonel said. Make sure you lock your cars. Don't be an easy target. I mean, the fraud thing's still real. I mean, if you get a phone call that's sketchy or you don't feel that it's real, make sure you call the office first before you send them money.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of issues with that. Tax season's coming up upon us. January's right around the corner. So if you don't feel comfortable with it, make sure you call us, and we'll make sure it's validated before you send any money, or you have a warrant for your arrest. I know that was going around too as well.
We'll never call you for
They were pulling our names off they were pulling our names off the website and saying it was us, and if you didn't turn yourself in, I had a call on him. Your assistant sheriff called me, and he wasn't very nice and called me all kind of names. I said, well, I don't sound like him. And he had gave me the number, whatnot. It was just that fraud stuff again. I mean, if you don't feel comfortable, just call us, and that's what we're here for.
Yeah. Normally, when you tell them you want to call them back, they hang up.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Anything else? Thank you very much,
No problem.
Sheriff, and Deputy Sheriff, and Deputy Sheriff, Assistant Sheriff. Sorry.
I answered.
But I really appreciate what you're doing for the county. And as we go into the holiday season, just be careful out there.
You guys too. And I'd like to say hi to Mr. Hawkins. Hope he's feeling better.
Yeah, so we got public comment now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we have anyone in the room for public comment? Okay, John, you want to read it, or?
Absolutely. While all views and perspectives are welcome during public comment, be aware that speakers are personally responsible for their own expressions and comments. It's recommended that speakers refrain from commenting on unsettled claims or complaints and refrain from using names where possible. The Police Accountability Board will accommodate public comment in person or by telephone. Those who have joined us virtually, and they have all joined by computer, you may use the raise your hand function, and we will call on you in the order in which they appear on my screen. Speakers, whether in person or participating virtually, be limited to 2 minutes for individuals or 5 minutes for those that are designated representative of an organization. Board of County Commissioners has adopted 2 resolutions pertaining to public comment. A copy of those is on the table as you entered the room. We ask individuals to please identify yourself and whether speaking as an individual, again, you'll be allocated the 2 minutes, or as the designated representative of an organization will be allocated 5. We'll start with those in the room first. Please make your way to the microphone if anybody wishes to provide public comment.
Okay, if you could come to the mic, tell us who you are.
Naquita Coates, Gross, I'm married. Prince Frederick. So I'm honestly very much outraged by the things that I've heard and heard this evening. I think that we're missing the point of the PAB. A lot of community members across Maryland came together and put together the legislation for the PAB. Okay? So in this meeting, I've heard many of you speaking about the community as if they will not understand the information that we are not receiving from you all. Additionally, in your annual report, there is no information for us to take away. It is very broad, it's very vague. When it comes to these charges that have been given, what are they? How do we know that that the police department is actively doing the work to hold each other accountable when we come into this space and we hear you all speaking to the police as you are friends? As the ACC chair said, we're buddies, right? So if you are buddies, how can you hold your buddy accountable? Because what I hear when I come to these meetings is a friend group getting together and having a meeting. In addition to that, the police department, the sheriff's department has continuously made statements to the public that minimize the concerns of many community members who are people of color. There were incidents throughout the years where the sheriff's department has gone to Facebook and made statements saying, oh, this isn't a big deal. This is just a decoration. Oh, this is just a card. Don't take it seriously. And at the same time, rallying the community to find people who have vandalized signs of certain presidential candidates. It is clear that there is a bias in the police department. There is a bias within this space. If accountability is not happening, if you're concerned about how the community is communicating and interacting with the police, then prioritize the community above police. We sat in here and we listened to the police say that 30 days is a hard time frame to stick to. Yet we force families in grief to work within a year to figure out how they're going to move forward about their lost loved one, lost in the hands of the police. 1 year, and then the police denies them information and access to records to make an informed decision about how they'll move forward. This is not acceptable, and this is not the purpose of the PAB.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the room who wishes to provide comment? And if you would please identify yourself and whether speaking as an individual or the designated representative of groups, I can give you the right amount of time.
Sure. My name is Emily. I'm speaking on behalf of myself. I just wanted to make a comment just about the way that we're speaking about.
Where are you from, ma'am?
I'm sorry?
You say your name was
My name is Emily.
Emily, and
Yeah,
where?
I'm speaking on behalf of myself.
Where are you from?
I'm from Chesapeake Beach.
Chesapeake Beach.
Yeah. So I just wanted to make a note of the tone of which we're talking about certain demographics of people. Earlier, we were talking about people who are incarcerated, and I understand this is maybe just how people view people who are incarcerated, but honestly, it's unacceptable. We called them prisoners, and we basically denounced the fact that they may or may not be productive members of the society. Many of us have loved ones that have been incarcerated, and they are no less than the people that are in here in this room. They are community members. They are our community members. They are our neighbors. They're our family members. They're our loved ones. And so when we're talking about them and talking about the way that the police should be also interacting with them, we need to be mindful that they deserve the same respect and courtesy that we deserve just as ourselves. So just be mindful in the way that we talk about other people, and the way you're perceiving these people. They are not less. They are just like us. Could be anybody in this room. And that's it.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Elena Jimenez, and I ask each of you to, before I get started, to have a little grace over me. My family and I are currently grieving the loss of my brother. Today is the 1-year anniversary of his death. He died at the detention center here in Calvert County. His name was Angel Jimenez. My name is Elena Jimenez, and I'm here because 2 weeks ago, the state's attorney released a video to the community at large at the same time as it was released to us to view all at the same time. And my family and I were horrified by what we saw in that video, at the way and the manner in which my brother, an average, everyday dude, blue-collar worker, small business owner of this community, a licensed master electrician who fell down on his luck post-COVID and was struggling to get back on his feet, and wound up at the detention center over child support, and wound up carried out in a body bag. And 2 weeks ago, when we saw the video from the state's attorney's office, my brother was restrained in handcuffs, and according to the report, those handcuffs and the restraint chair prohibited his ability to breathe. On top of that, they placed a mask, which I will call a suffocation mask, that was probably 10 times too small for his head, that the officers that were present continued to have to adjust because it obviously did not fit his face. And the area of said spit mask that was placed on his head had a portion of it that appeared to have some sort of cotton fabric or something that was obstructing his mouth and his nose and his ability to breathe. And his final words that we heard on that video after 11 and a half months of having to wait for answers and information pertaining to his death in this facility, in this county, the last words were, "I can't breathe, I need oxygen, I'm bleeding from my head." The only comfort that I received from that video was hearing him say the Lord's Prayer as he recognized and accepted that he was going to die in that cell by himself. His children deserve better, he deserved better, we deserve better, and the community deserved better. It took the county, it took the sheriff over 8 months to even make mention of his loss, of his death, and his
time's up.
passing here. I appreciate your grace. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Just want to clarify one thing. Anything at the detention center is not under the purview of the Police Accountability Board. Any complaints or anything?
I sat here and listened to, which I appreciate the presence of Sheriff Cox, and I do want to make a statement directly to you that in your announcement that you placed on social media, there were several people who spoke on your behalf and said that
Ma'am, your time's up.
That you were a good man and that you would do the right thing. And so I just hope that you look into the policies, because that's what I heard about here, were the policies, that what you bring before the board are policies for review and for recommendation.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the room?
Anyone else in the room?
Okay.
So if this board wouldn't be in
Could
charge of
please,
that.
sir, identify yourself and whether
My name's
speaking
Nate from Calvert County.
as an individual or the designated?
Individual, sir.
Thank you.
If this board wouldn't be the group that's responsible for dealing with this lady's issues, who would be? Who would be the person that would be in charge of dealing with that?
Because Sheriff Cox said that he has dominion over this Howard County Detention Center. So if he is the one who's in charge of that, is this not the place to bring that complaint forward?
You're saying that
Who's in charge
this
of
is
the
this is
corrections
not the
center?
place for any issues with the detention center.
However,
So if there is an issue with the detention center, then you have to bring that to the sheriff's office, or of course you also have the court system that you can go through.
Okay.
Anyone else in the room? Okay, the first person on my screen that has raised their hand is Joseph, SOMD .leaders. If you would please identify yourself, whether speaking as an individual or as the designated representative of a group. TS, if you could please unmute him. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Joseph Cormier from Owings, Maryland. I want to start by saying his name, Angel Jimenez. This is a tragedy for their family and our community, and the only potential positive to come from this is a review of the policy and procedures of the Sheriff's Office and Detention Center that made it possible. Care, custody, and control. Calvert County had a duty to protect Mr. Jimenez from himself, from other inmates, and from the staff's action or inaction. The finger pointing from the state's attorney between the Sheriff's Office and their contractor for medical services, and the Safety and Instruction Manual of SureGuard and the CCOS policy does not absolve Calvert County from that duty. From the time Mr. Jimenez the cell was opened and he attacked the deputy, the chair was called for in less than a minute. Where is that fall on the escalation of force spectrum? That no one was charged under one law because they weren't sworn deputies is a technicality and understandable, but homicide is still a crime. Once the staff went hands-on, is it policy for 7 people to dogpile on an inmate? And once Mr. Jimenez was secured by handcuffs and leg shackles, is it reasonable for 3 staff members to continue to kneel on him, including his neck and his head? Once Mr. Jimenez was handcuffed and ankle shackled, he was under control. So what purpose was the restraint chair, if not punitive? He could have been put back into solitary confinement. The Sure Guard Correctional Chair PDF says that this can cause injury or death. And even though it didn't say specifically, if you don't remove the handcuffs in time, does not absolve Calvert County from common sense. This is not the first death of an inmate or mental health patient in a restraint chair in this nation. Positional asphyxia is a known danger to restraints. And even though the lieutenant said the cuffs stay on, if that's not a lawful order, every staff member who followed it is culpable as well. Just as at a firing range, everyone's a safety officer and everyone has a duty to not follow unlawful or unsafe orders. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker that has raised their hand, August K. Clayton. Please identify yourself and whether speaking as an individual or as the designated representative of a group. And please speak into the microphone. We are having some difficulty. We're still having some difficulties.
Are you able to hear me now clearer?
Or is that that is better, yes.
All right, awesome. Good evening, everyone. I'm deeply heartbroken by the lack of action taken by PAB on the murder of Angel Jimenez and the custody of CCDC. Since 2021, the law has mandated PABs to review complaints against law enforcement, but you all who have been entrusted with recommendations are clearly failing to ensure the safety of its residents. Instead of seeking power to hold CCSO accountable, clearly you seek to keep it informed. CCSO oversees CCDC, and law enforcement officers control access to and run this facility. The administrator of CCDC is also the chair of the Commission on Correctional Standards, yet despite his role, Angel was murdered by corrections officers in his own detention center. Additionally, the sheriff was ruled against in 2023 for blocking an ACLU fee waiver request for records on how CCSO polices its residents. This avoidance is part and parcel of the long-standing issue of qualified immunity that persists across Calvert County. And now it seems that it's taken root on this board, as it seems that you all seek partnership with the very office that murdered Angel. The fact that PAB won't even know the names of officers who are harming our community should compel each of you to act. It is the antithesis of accountability and will continue to result in more deaths. Whether or not you've watched the video, I truly pray that Angel's voice reciting the Lord's prayers, his cry out to God should chart a new course for this board and for policing across Calvert County, whether or not y'all are in this good old boys club. Whether or not you decide to take power, the residents of Southern Maryland will respond accordingly. And we'll see y'all in January. Thank you.
Again, I'll make sure we're clear. The law for this board and the Administrative Charging Committee is for give citizens the opportunity to lodge complaints against law enforcement. It has nothing to do with corrections. It's very clear. The law is very clear. We can give you a copy of the law that was created in Calvert County, and we can give you a copy of the state. But I'm not going to sit here and someone accuse me of not following the law. That is not what we're doing. Let's go forward with the next one.
The next speaker that has raised their hand, screen name CRYS. Please identify yourself and whether speaking as an individual or as the designated representative of an organization.
Hello, my name is Chris. I'm speaking as an individual and I'm calling in from Charles County. And I'm here in support of Angel Jimenez and lifting up that this board is actually the forum to bring about these concerns because you all are accountable to what goes on in all of the departments. I personally want to just bring awareness to what the young person said before, is that this is not a place where people can come and be in kinship. This is about addressing policies. Policies also should not be reactionary, and it should not take someone losing their life under the care of the sheriff, who is strongly dedicated, according to their statement, to faith, family, and perseverance and passion for the community. If this board is truly invested in the passion for the community, they should also be invested in looking into the misconduct of your residents, your folks who are serving the community. As this family member stated, we're a small business owner. Bringing income and supporting those officers that probably would come in and support their business. So I think it is very disrespectful of you to talk about the law and throw the law back in citizens' faces when citizens are sitting here telling you that you all are accountable for these policies and these policies are not working. Thank you.
Last speaker, SELAMAWIT. Please identify yourself and whether speaking as an individual or as the designated representative of a group.
Hello, my name is Salamawi. I'm speaking as an individual. Mr. Wilson, I think as someone who is chairing a board that is intended to shore up relationships between the community and the sheriff's office, your response to people coming in here and letting you know what happened in an entity that is run by the sheriff's office is extremely disappointing and is very, very harmful to the trust that you are trying to build. You treated the sheriff and the people who came in this room who already have power with so much more respect than you treated a mourning sister and community members who are concerned about what happened. Whether or not the law says that, the way you reacted was extremely disrespectful and does not ensure any confidence in your ability to actually do what you came and set out here to do and what the Police Accountability Board Act in Maryland created these boards for. So I hope that you go home and you reflect on how you acted and how you took something personally when the intention was to ensure that this community was informed on what was happening. There are other ways to handle and respond and make sure that people are clear about what a space is or isn't. The way that you handled yourself was without decorum and without respect and simple humanity and care for the people who are here. So I hope you go home and reflect on how you were acting.
Thank you very much. Anyone else?
That is the last speaker, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Just so the community is aware, the Correctional Officer Bill of Rights that gives employees of detention center a personnel manual or a roadmap for disciplinary actions was not removed from the state legislation when the state met to address police accountability starting in the August 2020 timeframe. When they adopted the Police Accountability Board, it only pertains to law enforcement officers, not correctional deputies or correctional officers.
Okay. Anything else to come before the board? Now we entertain a motion to adjourn.
I motion.
Second. Stand adjourned.